All right, thanks everyone for coming out today for Bike to City Hall. I'm Steve Vaccaro from Streets PAC. Streets PAC is your Livable Streets Political Action Committee. We came together back in 2013 in order to carry forward the years and decades, frankly, of work to make New York a more livable, walkable, and bikeable city. And look how far we've come. Out here in the rain.
Yes.
I'm proud to announce that with the support of Streets PAC, we have a caucus of 21 council members, the most ever in the New York City Council. It's not quite as large as the Progressive Caucus, but we're getting there. Soon we're going to eclipse it. And we are so grateful to the Progressive Caucus for helping us pull together this event today, along with all of our electeds and with many of our partners. I'd just like...
No, we got mics. No, Steve, we got mics. No, we got mics, Steve. So
okay. So, I just want to quickly let you know who's here. We're so glad to have our citywide official, Brad Lander, the controller. He's hiding around back here somewhere. We have two of our borough presidents, Antonio Reynoso and Mark Levine. All right. Long-term Streets PAC endorsees and partners. We have so many city council members here. Shahana Hanif from Park Slope. We have Keith Powers. Right, I wrote in from Keith from Union Square. Rain or shine. We have Jennifer Gutierrez. All right. And also from Brooklyn, Crystal Hudson. So glad that you're here. We also want to recognize all of our partners who helped pull this together. Oh, I'm sorry. Julie Wan.
She's here.
And Lincoln, did you get Chris Marte?
Lincoln Wrestler.
Right here.
Chris Marte right here.
Come on, I'm so sorry.
Tiffany Caban.
Who gave me this sheet of paper?
There was a new MC.
Julie Wan. From Long Island City. Julie Wan. Thank you. The League of Conservation Voters. Get Women Cycling. Angelina, I'm glad you could make it. Los Deliveristas Union. Los Deliveristas Unidos. And City Bike, who helped get us here. Thank you. Bike New York. Ken Podzaba, Transportation Alternatives, who helped pull this together. And of course, as I mentioned, Streets PAC. So, what we all learned since 2013 and more recently during the pandemic is this is the ideal way to commute to work. You're not crammed up against people in the subway or on the bus. You're making on your own timetable, naturally socially distanced, staying strong and healthy, keeping our air clean, and making this a more livable and walkable city. And more accessible to your neighbors who you see as you're passing, walking, biking, etc. That's Streets PAC's vision of our city, and that's what today's event is about, is to show that even in the rain, it's a perfect way to get to work, okay? And I just want to reflect back on our first Bike to Work Day back in 2014. We had Carlos Menchaca, Brad Lander, Ben Kalos, Helen Rosenthal. It was the first time we had bikes over there on the steps of City Hall. They didn't let us in this time. That's okay. We're so big. We need this much space out here in the park. I want to recognize Council Members Ressler and Powers, who are going to take the occasion to talk about legislation they're introducing related to street safety. I also want you to listen carefully what Councilmember Hanif from Park Slope is planning about creating a Deliverista hub so that we can, you know, what we also saw during the pandemic, in addition to an increase in people biking to work on their own, is this burgeoning new economic engine of delivery cyclists. We have estimated to be 75 to 100,000 working cyclists day in, day out, bringing us the stuff that we need and helping keep this city run. They need to be safe, they need decent working conditions, and they need to be recognized for the contribution that they make to our city, okay? And what we need is the infrastructure to support what they're doing, and that's what Councilmember Hanif's legislation is about. And there's going to be a number of other important points about legislation that you'll hear from today. So, without any further ado, I'd just like to say we're going to ask Antonio to step up first and talk a little bit about the state of cycling in New York City. It's one of our longest and earliest Streets Pack endorsees.
Yes, yes, thank you so much. All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Boy, we've come a long way. We've come a very long way from a time when being an elected official who cared about safe streets was considered a hindrance to their progress. Now, these members that were putting their necks on the lines in 2013 and 2014 by saying we care about bike lanes, we care about pedestrians, we care about good street design, we care about safe streets. We don't want people dying anymore. We don't want anyone being added to the Families for Safe Streets membership. When we did that, they all thought that it was going to be a hindrance to our progress. Instead, you have Brad Lander here, who was on the first ride in 2014 and was one of the first members that was with us before 2014, but he didn't want to ride alone to work. But we got there.
There was no caucus.
All right, all right. And then we built out a transportation committee that is asking questions that have never been heard before, making statements that were never heard before, because we started putting people that are walking, pedestrians, and cyclists ahead of cars. That's what we did. And now we stand here with all these council members, 21 council members, Streets Pack endorsees. I would have never, I want to be honest, I didn't think we were going to get here this quickly. But I'm glad we're here. And I'm glad we could come out in the rain and show that we're still dedicated to this, that rain won't stop the progress that we're making. And to let all the council members know, hold the line. Hold the line. A few folks talking about wanting to roll back the work that we've done on street design and cycling and pedestrian safety. Hold the line. We're here because of it. And now we have Councilmember Powers and Ressler that are going to talk about two pieces of legislation. One of them I'm co-sponsoring alongside Councilmember Lincoln Ressler, in which we're finally going to allow for DOT to speak to community boards about any projects that they want to do that are safety related, but not having to wait a 45-day blackout period to make those changes happen. Because safety can't wait 45 days. We need to do it right now. We can save a life right now. So I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank Streets Pack for taking a shot at an underdog in 2013 and endorsing me and supporting me. And I've been writing out and thanking everybody for the great work that they're doing. The deliveristas, Streets Pack, Transportation Alternatives, City Bike, and everybody that contributes. I can't tell you how grateful and happy I am that I'm here. And I want to say that even though we're not in Brooklyn right now and we are in Manhattan,
Don't forget it. What he said.
we got a lot of work to do borough-wide to build out a network that makes sense and that has a real investment to it. And alongside the rest of these borough presidents, we're going to be working together to make sure that we follow through on that commitment. Thank you so much, and spread love. It's the Brooklyn way.
Hey, thanks very much, Borough President Antonio Reynoso.
In Spanish, very quickly for China.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Very quickly. Mark is gonna do a better job than me.
Not true. Not true.
Hoy estamos reconociendo y celebrando el progreso que hemos hecho sobre asegurar que los peatones, las bicicletas y la seguridad de personas fuera de carro se puede celebrar hoy. Eso es lo que estamos haciendo, asegurando que seguimos con el progreso que se tiene que tener para tener una vida positiva, una calidad de vida positiva. Y lo que hemos visto es un engrandecimiento de concejales, que comenzamos con 4 o 5 concejales, ahora son 21 que han visto este progreso. Estamos apoyando la infraestructura para asegurar que los divileristas que están llegando y dándonos los gustos que queremos y que ellos estén seguros. Y te vamos a seguir con este progreso y apoyando para que otra vez la calidad de vida de todos los neoyorquinos siga progresando y que haya más seguridad en nuestras calles. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Borough President. And just before we get to the legislation from council members, Wrestler and Powers that you just heard about, I do want to ask Brad Lander, our controller, to come up. And I just want to recognize that Brad, as much, if not more so than any other elected official in the city, has worked very closely with Streets PAC, with me and others at Streets PAC, to craft legislation to make our streets safer, to create accountability for drivers, and to help our city streets function better for everyone. He has blazed a path of incredible partnership in terms of trying to improve our transportation policy here in the city. He's one of our earliest and most stalwart partners in city government. Thanks very much, Brad Lander. Let's hear it.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. I do feel like the OG here in Antonio, like imagine all the way back to 2014, but thinking all the way back to 2010, when there was no Streets PAC, when there was no Bike to Work Caucus, when there was not a transportation committee chair in the council who was looking to expand cycling and transportation alternatives. Now, there were a lot of folks who were around here because we certainly did have transportation alternatives and Bike New York, and a lot of folks, John Orcutt was there. So I do want to, if you were part of the battle for the Prospect Park West bike lane, will you raise your hand? Because I just think I really want to honor the OGs.
All 3 of you.
But, well, we won that, and now we're still fighting.
Exactly.
2 things. First of all, since that time, actually, since 2010, we've been fighting for better bike infrastructure just on the Brooklyn Bridge, right, all over the city. But on the Brooklyn Bridge for a decade, more than a decade, 12 years, we fought for better transportation infrastructure on the Brooklyn Bridge. And every year we did Bike to City Hall, we rode over that pedestrian bikeway, and unbelievably unsafe for pedestrians, unsafe for cyclists. And for most of that time, we said we wanted to widen the pedestrian path. And we said we had plans, we had engineers, we had designers, we did studies. We thought we were making slow, steady progress. And lo and behold, the bike lane we needed was there all along. All we had to do was take 1 lane of traffic away.
Car traffic.
1 lane of car traffic. And now we have a fantastic bike lane, a safe and beautiful pedestrian way that I ran in yesterday over, and it is hugely better for pedestrians. It is hugely better for cyclists. It did not cost millions of dollars. It just took political will and courage. And that really is a metaphor for what we need to do in this city. If we are willing to take street space, now dedicated to cars, and turn it over to people, to pedestrians, to plazas, to cycling, then we can have a truly extraordinary city, and something just like the lovely ride we had in this morning. I was in Paris in September, and all you got to do is take a look at what they have done. They had the courage to take a lot of street space and give it to pedestrians and give it to open space and give it to cycling, and you wind up with a much healthier, a much more sustainable, a much more bike-friendly city. Doesn't even take that much money. It just takes some political will. That's my takeaway from this first Bike to Work Day when we got to ride over that Brooklyn Bridge bike lane. So thank you for everyone who fought that fight. I'm going to let Keith Powers talk about this bill he's introducing that builds on work, but I guess I will just conclude by saying Steve mentioned the Reckless Driver Accountability Act that we worked together to pass, but no one would say that there's accountability for reckless drivers, would they? No. So we have a lot more work to do to build on that act, to build on this new bill that Keith is introducing, and to build the support together to make sure that we make our streets safe for everybody who walks or rides or drives on them. Thank you very much, Streets PAC. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Bike New York. Thank you, GA. Thank you, Progressive Caucus. It's amazing to have this incredible bike caucus and fantastic progressive caucus led by Sarah and Lincoln. We're so grateful for you guys.
All right. And thank you, Brad. You know, Brad just talked about how sometimes the biggest problem is not logistical, it's not traffic engineering, it's not even the money, it's the political will. And it's not a question of saying, okay, we're taking from you and giving to the other, but it's a question of finding a solution that makes the streets work for everyone. And the person you're going to hear from next, Borough President Mark Levine, I can remember what a difficult job that was, finding that balance on Amsterdam Avenue right past his district office when there was an absolutely horrible traffic fatality, and we knew something needed to be done to make that part of New York, where I live, uptown in Manhattan, safer. It was not easy. Mark Levine showed the leadership that we needed in order to be able to bring in bike lanes so there was a space on the street for pedestrians, for cyclists, for motorists, and we could make our streets more livable and safe. Now, in his position as Borough President, he's looking at the whole island. Let's hear from what Mark has in store for us.
Thank you so much, Steve. This press conference has been way too Brooklyn-centric, I gotta say.
Yes.
So, Steve, remind me what borough do you live in?
Manhattan.
Well done. Powers and Marte, what do you guys say?
Don't forget it.
Was anyone there for the fight to create the Central Park West bike lane? Yes, you were. Yes, you were. The Prospect Park fight paled in comparison to that. You have no idea. I want to make a really important point. Bicycling is about opportunity. When you give a community access, safe access to bicycling, you create opportunity. Opportunity to get to work. That's economic development. Opportunity to get to education, to get to shopping, to get to healthcare. Transportation is at the heart of so much of life in New York City. And we are expanding the opportunities for transportation in communities that have been denied this safe and healthy access to transportation for too long. Biking is about public health. And so it is amazing news that the number of people getting to work, getting around town by bicycle is surging. It's at an all-time high. You can applaud for that. Yes, you can. And that was such a hard-fought victory. Every inch we have moved forward has been the result of political battles. And I am in awe of Streets PAC and their ability to turn the passion into campaign power and victories. Thank you, Street PAC, for your support of me and amazing candidates throughout the 5 boroughs. We have so much more work to do. There are hundreds of thousands of people who would be getting to work on a bike if they felt safer doing it. We have much more work to do to make it safer for everybody to use bikes, to get to work, to get to school, to get to medical appointments. That's the fight ahead of us. And I'm all in with Street PACs and this amazing coalition of council members to make that happen. Briefly, en español, si se puede, todavía están ahí, ¿verdad que sí? Ya que lo dijo Antonio Reynoso, tenía que lucir un poco. No, es decir lo siguiente, venimos aquí de todas las áreas, a través de los 5 condados de Nueva York, concejales, un par de presidentes de condado, venimos aquí en bicicleta. Esperemos que todo neoyorquino tenga esa oportunidad, porque poder tener un transporte en bicicleta es crear oportunidad de trabajo, de llegar a su escuela, a sus citas médicas. Esto se trata de desarrollo económico. Queremos que toda la comunidad de Nueva York tenga esa oportunidad. Pero quiere decir que hay que hacer a las calles más seguras para los que quieren caminar en bicicleta. Y eso es una pelea. ¿Puede aplaudir los que entienden lo que estoy diciendo, por favor? Los pocos. Eso es una pelea política. Hay que batallar en el ambiente político y ganar elecciones al final del día. Y estamos aquí celebrando esas victorias. Y aún nos quedan más victorias por ganar. Así que gracias a Streets PAC, gracias a esa coalición, a celebrar y ganar mucho más por el bien de todos los que quieren montar bicicletas en esta ciudad. Felicidades, pa'lante. Now in Bengali. I'm just kidding. I am just kidding.
You pull that up.
I got you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. And now with this borough rivalry going on, I got to switch back to Brooklyn for a second and welcome Shahana Hanif, our council member from Park Slope. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much in your role leading the Progressive Caucus to help us organize this event.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Councilmember Shahana Hanif, and I just want to start off by saying that this morning's ride was my first ride after getting my left hip replaced in February of this year. That's right. It's my first bionic bike ride, and guess what? I got to ride one of these babies. It was a smooth ride, but again, a reminder just how harsh the streets are for people with disabilities, people who are healing, people who are trying to get around, and even on the Brooklyn Bridge, the narrow lane to ride was scary. It was scary. But thank you to Noel, who was behind me, riding along, watching, and ensuring that I got to City Hall safely. I also want to give a shout out to Councilmember Hudson, whose helmet I inherited. So a lot of people have had my back to make sure that I get to ride, and that's the kind of commitment that we need to have for women cyclists, for women of color and black women cyclists. These streets have to be safe for all riders across this entire city. So I know that many more thousands of people could be riding to get to work, but already there are thousands of people riding to get to work, and these are our deliveristas. And we're not nearly doing enough to make sure that there are no more crashes and deaths of delivery workers. Last year and this year, we've had countless crashes resulting in either death or serious injuries that are preventing them to get back to work. One of them is my constituent, Imran Hussein, who we couldn't find for over a week. And then when we traced him, he was unconscious and right now is recuperating and recovering for what will be months on end that he won't be able to return to work. So we have to be committed to working class cyclists. We've got to be committed to immigrant cyclists who are already out on these streets getting food delivered to us. They were doing that essential work during the entirety of peak of COVID, and right now they're continuing to get our food to us in weather like this. So you and I have an option, a choice to be like, I'm not cycling to work today. But these delivery workers don't have a choice. And so one of the priorities that I'm pushing for with Workers' Justice Project are the deliverista hubs. We've got to make sure that there are spaces crafted just for them, for bike tune-ups, for mechanics to fix up their bikes, for them to take breaks, for them to be able to park their bike and to get other issues completed as they're making their rounds and getting food delivered to us. And so right now, the biggest priority is to make sure that we move on implementing deliverista hubs. And I'm proud to partner with the Workers' Justice Project, who are leading this effort. The Progressive Caucus is prioritizing a seed funding of $250,000 in order to get moving on the deliverista hubs. And so I'd like to actually invite Hilda Lynn and Lihia to say a little bit more about the deliverista hubs.
Good morning. I want to say something. It's been a long journey, but I will tell you that our workers have to go here to City Council to fight to actually get their bikes and use their bikes to work. Let's not forget that. A lot of our bikers were criminalized before for using the same tool that today City Bike consider as now at the showcase. Our workers have been using bikes and electric bikes for a long time when they were not the cool thing, as my workers will tell me, right? But we cannot forget that their fight is continue. Like, we have lost a lot of people, and the deliverista hub is the option. This is their own idea. They didn't went to somebody that they wouldn't want to wait for somebody. This is the workers' idea of how we can find an infrastructure that can provide all cyclists, because when it comes to cyclists, there's only one group. There's no difference, right? All of us, when you're in need, every person that is in a cyclist will help you out. And we have seen it because our workers are helped by many of the cyclists when they're in an injury or in a crash. So these hubs are going to provide them a space for everybody as a network that we need in the city to kind of like do stuff. Use the bathroom, park my bike, take a meal. I have a flat tire. Where do I fix it? A safety issue. If I have a problem and an issue, I get assaulted, where do I go? This is what we're looking for. And as I said, the Liberistas are not proposing this as an idea, not for them, but for the whole New York, because that's how they are and that's how it's always been. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for everybody.
And let's remind ourselves that those that are at the highest risks of dying happens to be Black and brown cyclists. Just since 2020, 24 deliveristas have died in our streets, driving to deliver New Yorkers foods and groceries. So this is about protecting, not only making sure that we ride safe, but this is also about protecting people's lives. And this is what not only the Liberista hubs are, but this is the fight of every Black, brown people who cannot afford to get around the city on public transportation, right? So making our streets safe means making not only safer for people to survive, but also to get to work, to provide a better life to our families. So this is what we're fighting within Workers' Justice Project and Los Deliveristas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't emphasize more what we said. Many of us, it's bike to work day. For our deliveristas, it's bike is work. Okay, that's the difference. I'm an attorney who represents cyclists who get struck. We are swamped. We are inundated with cases of people injured, with families of people killed on their bicycles. We need government support. We need government to step in and make the streets safe. This is a situation like coal miners in the turn from the 19th to the 20th century. That's the level of danger that our delivery workforce is facing in the turn of the 20th to the 21st. I'm so glad to be standing here with so many, including Keith Powers, council member from the east side of Manhattan, who's been
East
with
side,
us
don't forget it.
from very early on, who's going to talk about what government can do to help deliver relief.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone, and thank you guys for having me. And thank you to my colleagues in the Progressive Caucus for organizing this every year. We didn't want to just bike to work when we got here. We have a job to do, and that means we have to make sure that we keep our streets safe for our constituents and every New Yorker. And when we talk about biking, when we talk about street safety, you have to, of course, confront the reality of reckless driving in this city. And anybody who biked to work today probably had to confront that one question or two questions along the way of a dangerous car flying past you, or a tricky intersection, or something that if you were hit by that vehicle, it might take your life or might permanently injure you. And so it's a beautiful celebrate biking, but we have a job to do, and that is to keep our residents here safe, because I want every day to be bike to work day, and I want it to be bike to work safely day, and I want it to be drive safely day in New York City. So we are introducing legislation today, and he just left, but I'm introducing it with our city controller, Brad Lander, to look at reckless driving in New York City. We are telling the Department of Transportation, we want you to go out, we want you to look at dangerous intersections, look at places where there's reckless driving and bad behavior. Every single year, we want you to study that behavior, come back to us as the City Council with your recommendations to how we can fix it. Sounds like a good idea? Yeah. So we're introducing legislation today. I hope all my colleagues, Progressive Caucus or not, will see common sense. Look at the places where there is dangerous behavior, and let's get recommendations, and then we can go out with our Department of Transportation, our colleagues, and we can go out and try to fix those. And I will say, every single death, every single injury on the streets of New York is another reminder about our jobs here to not stop. We don't put a bike lane in and stop, and we don't just fix one location and stop. Every day we have to go out to build a city that is welcoming to the New Yorkers that want to get out there and share the streets. It's not just for the vehicles, It's for the pedestrians, it's for the bikers, and there's so many ways people get around these days, and that's what we got to do, build a city that really addresses and confronts the realities of safety. So I hope everybody will support that bill. Thank you, of course, to Councilor Ressler, Councilor Hanif for their work here today. Let's build a safer city so every day can be Bike to Work Day. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councilmember Powers. You know, and I do want to introduce Lincoln Ressler, council member from Brooklyn, and just say, you know, for those of us who've been involved in city politics over the decades, over the long haul, we see the barriers that are created from the way things were, the old regime, you know, the democratic machine that really stood in the way of a lot of these changes that we're finally starting to see. And Lincoln is someone who I've admired and watched for years, who's dedicated to helping build our government up from the bottom up to make sure that the needs of people are met, to make sure we have the institutions at the neighborhood and local level all the way up to make sure that we can reform things and not have these barriers where the machine politics get in the way of meaningful reform to give people safe streets and neighborhoods. So I'm so pleased to introduce him and ask him to speak about what he's been doing. Thank you.
Well, I will admit to being a little bit wet and a little bit cold, but I couldn't be happier to be here. I really want to thank Steve and Streets PAC and all of the leadership from Streets PAC, the great folks at TA, at NYCLV, at Bike New York, and of course the Workers' Justice Project for joining the Progressive Caucus in putting Bike to Work together today and sponsoring this great event. I will tell you, I bike every day. It's my favorite way to get around. It's the most efficient. It's good for my health and my belly, which is important. But I have to say, it's scarier than it should be. And far too often, every single day, I feel like I'm putting myself at risk. And I know that we would have thousands and thousands of more cyclists riding the streets, commuting to work every day if they felt safe too. And our environment, the climate justice demands that we get people out of their cars and into bicycles. But the only way we're going to make that happen is if we actually make it safe. And that's why I'm so proud to be introducing legislation today that's going to get more protected bike lanes built in New York City faster. Thank you. And it's simple enough. After the Department of Transportation goes to the community board, engages community stakeholders, releases their plans for protected bike lanes, they don't need to wait to get them built. They can get to work tomorrow. And that is what we need. I'll tell you, tonight, actually, at Community Board 2 in my district in downtown Brooklyn, the Department of Transportation is going to be presenting on a plan on Skirmerhorn Street. Skirmerhorn, oof, finally, right? Skirmerhorn is the worst bike lane in New York City. It is awful. It's a great parking lot. And there is better double parking on Skirmerhorn than any place in all of Brooklyn. But it is a horrible place to ride a bike. It is a vital route, east-west through downtown Brooklyn. It is the only way to get through downtown Brooklyn, and it is unsafe. So today, the Department of Transportation is proposing a protected two-way bike lane, and I want them to start that project tomorrow. And that's what this legislation is going to do. I want to thank Antonio Reynoso, who originally sponsored this bill, all 4 borough presidents who have co-sponsored it, 18 council members who have lent their name. We're going to get to 26 council members, a majority of the body by next week. And I want to thank each and every advocate for helping us to push this thing forward. Together, we're going to make cycling safe, and we're going to make it happen. So thank you all.
All right, thank you so much. Clearly, we have our caucus firing on all cylinders in the City Council, in the halls of the Borough President's offices, 1 Center Street, the Controller's office, and elsewhere. We also have relied for decades on our nonprofit organizations who have been moving the ball forward. I want to recognize and ask for some words from Danny Harris from Transportation Alternatives. She's been around since the early 70s, making our streets more livable and safe.
Thank you.
Danny.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you to all the electeds that have been here today. I just want to start by saying that I have a kindergartner, and across the city there are kids every day who are learning to ride a bike. The amazing thing that happens is when we give kids this opportunity both to crawl, then to walk, and then to ride a bike, And then immediately the city withholds that freedom from children, that ability for them to ride their bike to school, to go see friends, to go see family, and eventually as they get older to start to experience the freedom of the city. What we're talking about is giving opportunity to New Yorkers of all ages, the ability to get around, the ability to access opportunity. Commute time is one of the single biggest factors of moving people out of generational poverty. You're right. Biking is not just to work, but biking is work. Not just for the 100,000 plus deliveristas in the city, but for those who rely on a bike every day to simply get to work and to be able to afford to keep a roof over their head. Right now, I also want to thank Council for their leadership on advancing speed cameras. For people who don't know, speeding takes place 24 hours a day, but our legislators in Albany ensure that our speed cameras do get a lot of rest, ensuring that they shut off every night at 10 p.m. and take the weekends off. We're in a fight to save lives in New York now, not just for everybody who bikes, but for those who want to walk across the street and even to make conditions safer for drivers. Albany, we need speed cameras on 24 hours a day. We need it on now. New Yorkers are dying. 60% of all the people who are dying on our streets are dying when speed cameras are off. Albany, you can turn this around. We need you to act today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny. Our next speaker, perhaps our last speaker, Angelina Azzolino from Get Women Cycling. I just want to say, we all know here there's a gender gap in cycling. People like me, I'm out there biking. You know, I have a little bit easier time duking it out with traffic, but we know we have a safe city when we have gender parity on our bikes out in the street. That's where we're trying to get. And I want Angelina to tell us a little bit about the work our organization is doing, Get Women Cycling.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So I want some of the women to come up behind me. I want Laura, and I want Roz, and I want Rose, and I want Hannah. You want to come on up, Hilda? Lydia. Where's our women? Woo. Let's get behind us. Let's create this crowd. Let's create this crowd. Because Get Women Cycling is about protecting our women, our femme-identifying, our trans, our non-binary communities. We're here advocating along with our peers for our right to choose. Now think about that, our right to choose and our right to move about freely, which is now being jeopardized. It's being threatened and sabotaged by the street violence that we are seeing every day when we leave our homes. We are experiencing violence, harassment, and disregard. Harassment from those who choose to cut us off, from those who run us off the roads, for those who continually, bitterly shame us and catcall. We are subjected to disregard of all those who do not follow the rule that was put in place by state and local governments to protect everyone. Disregard by those who have been tasked by creating infrastructure to help everybody in New York City without providing supporting services for people with us who are on two wheels. Services like adequate lighting, services like traffic signaling that is geared toward people on two wheels, services like air that we need to fill our tires with, services like electricity that we need to safely charge our electric batteries. So, while we are all here and we can celebrate this historical $900 million grant for safer streets, I want to know what we are doing while we are waiting for processes, while we are waiting for infrastructure to be in place. I want to know what we can do in the interim time. And not only are we waiting for answers from our elected officials and everyone here, but we're also going to help provide the solution, which is simply education. So how much of that $9 million is put toward in-person education and outreach at our local communities? How much are we giving members of communities that are at risk every day just by leaving their house the opportunity to get informed, to get context about the situation around them. Because you know what? Education is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And when you power communities, you have empowerment. With empowerment, real change happens. The type of change that allows for habits to be reconstructed and perceptions to go beyond the automobile industry and years of singular modalities here in New York City. So we are here advocating for our right to choose, for the freedom of mobility, and for in-person community access to education and information. Thank you.
I want to thank all the members of the press for coming, for documenting and taking all of these important statements and your interest in these issues. I think we're done for today. Time to get dry. Thanks everyone for coming.